50 years old, Liam never thought he'd be here. Completely broke, drowning in debt, and unsure how he'd provide for his family. Just a year ago, he was a proud business owner, running a company he built from the ground up. But one bad decision led to another, and soon the weight of financial losses became unbearable. The final blow came when the bank repossessed his house. Now, he's living in a cramped rental, surrounded by reminders of everything he lost. Every morning, Liam wakes up with the same crushing anxiety. His phone buzzes with calls from creditors, but he doesn't have the money to answer them. His wife is trying to stay strong, but he can see the worry in her eyes. Their savings are gone, and their teenage son had to drop out of his favorite sports team because they couldn't afford the fees. Guilt eats at Liam. He was supposed to be the provider, the leader, but now he feels like a failure. Liam spends hours scrolling through job listings, but no one wants to hire a 50-year-old man who hasn't worked a real job in decades. Even old friends stop returning his calls, as if his failure is contagious. The loneliness is suffocating. At night, he lies awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'll ever get out of this hole. The thought that maybe this is the end, that he'll never recover, creeps into his mind more often than he'd like to admit. But somewhere, deep inside, there's a flicker of something he can't quite name. A stubborn part of him refuses to believe that this is how his story ends. He doesn't know how, and he doesn't know when, but Liam tells himself one thing: he has to find a way out. Because if he doesn't, no one will. Liam always believed that hard times reveal true friends, but he never expected to feel this alone. At first, he reached out to old business partners and friends, hoping for advice, maybe even a small loan to help him get back on his feet. But the responses were all the same: polite rejections, ignored messages, and vague excuses. The people who once praised him at dinner parties now avoided him, as if his failure made him invisible. Desperate, he turned to the banks, thinking his years of being a responsible businessman would count for something. Instead, he was met with cold calculations. "Your debt-to-income ratio is too high," they said. "Your credit score is too low." No one cared about his past success, only the numbers on a screen. For the first time, Liam realized he wasn't just broke. He was trapped in a system that had already written him off. With no other options, Liam started applying for jobs, any job. But rejection after rejection hit him like a hammer. Some employers never called back. Others looked at his resume and politely told him he was overqualified, a word that sounded nice but really meant too old. He even considered lying about his age, but one look in the mirror told him it wouldn't work. At 50, he was fighting against more than just his finances. He was fighting against time. One night, sitting alone in his car outside a grocery store, Liam had a painful realization. No one was coming to save him. The system, his friends, even the people he once helped. None of them were going to pull him out of this. If he wanted a way out, he'd have to build it himself. It was terrifying, but in that moment, something inside him shifted. He stopped waiting and started planning. With no other options, Liam took the only job he could get: stocking shelves at a local grocery store. The pay was barely enough to cover rent, and every shift felt like a reminder of how far he had fallen. But he kept his head down and did the work, listening to customers, observing trends, and trying to stay invisible. Until one night, while unpacking a shipment, he overheard a frustrated store manager complaining about supply issues with a specific product. It was something simple, an everyday item that stores always needed but often struggled to keep in stock. Liam's business instincts kicked in. He started researching, making calls, and digging into why the supply chain was so unreliable. The deeper he looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It was a gap in the market. If he could solve this problem, even in a small way, he could create something valuable. With no money to invest, Liam had to get creative. On his lunch breaks, he reached out to small manufacturers, negotiating deals with suppliers who had excess inventory but no distribution. Using nothing but an old laptop and free online tools, he mapped out a business plan. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't guaranteed to work. But for the first time in months, he felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope. Late at night, after his grocery shifts, Liam worked tirelessly from his tiny apartment, making connections and setting up a simple website. His idea was a long shot and failure was still a very real possibility. But this time he wasn't waiting for permission, funding, or luck. He was betting on himself. And for the first time it felt like he had a fighting chance. Liam knew he had no money to waste, so every dollar mattered. He couldn't afford fancy software or marketing campaigns, so he used free tools, learned everything he could from online courses, and built his business from scratch. He worked his grocery shifts during the day and spent his nights sending emails, making cold calls, and negotiating deals with suppliers. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford. He started small, just a few orders at a time, personally handling deliveries when necessary. To cut costs, he used social media to market his business instead of paying for ads. He reached out to small store owners directly, offering them a simple solution to their supply issues. Some ignored him, some said no, but a few said yes, and that was enough to keep him going. As weeks passed, Liam became obsessed with efficiency. He found ways to streamline deliveries, negotiated better terms with suppliers, and even convinced a few stores to pay upfront, easing his cash flow problems. Every setback became a lesson. Every rejection fueled his determination. He wasn't just building a business. He was proving to himself that he still had what it took to succeed. But the pressure was relentless. He barely saw his family. His body ached from exhaustion, and doubt still crept in during the quiet moments. Yet, every small victory, every new order, every satisfied customer, kept him moving forward. He wasn't there yet, but for the first time in a long time he was no longer stuck. He was climbing. Liam finally felt like things were turning around. Orders were coming in steadily, and for the first time in months, he had a small cushion of cash. Determined to grow faster, he made his first big investment, buying a large batch of inventory at a discount. Felt like a smart move. If he could fulfill bigger orders, he could secure long-term contracts with more stores. He took the risk, hoping this would be the breakthrough he needed. But then, everything went wrong. The supplier delivered defective products, and customers started complaining. Some stores demanded refunds while others cut ties with him completely. Worse, the supplier refused to take responsibility, leaving Liam stuck with worthless inventory and no way to recover his money. In one brutal week, he lost nearly everything he had worked for. Sitting in his tiny apartment, staring at stacks of unsellable products, Liam felt the crushing weight of failure. His bank account was nearly empty again, and doubt filled his mind. Had he just wasted months of work? Maybe his friends were right. Maybe he was too old to start over. The thought of going back to square one was almost unbearable. For the first time since he began this journey, quitting felt like a real option. But as he sat there, something shifted. He had already lost everything before. He had survived rock bottom once. And if he could do it then, he could do it now. Instead of quitting, he took a deep breath, grabbed a notebook, and started analyzing what went wrong. This failure wouldn't be the end. It would be the lesson that made him unstoppable. Liam had two choices: walk away and accept defeat, or find a way to turn this failure into a lesson. Instead of reacting out of desperation, he took a step back and analyzed what went wrong. He realized he had rushed into the deal without properly vetting the supplier. He had put too much money into one risky investment. If he was going to survive, he needed a smarter, more strategic approach. Determined to rebuild, Liam reached out to every connection he had left: store owners, small suppliers, even former customers. He listened to their frustrations, learned more about their needs, and found a different supplier with a stronger track record. This time, he negotiated better terms, smaller batches, flexible payments, and quality guarantees. It wasn't a big leap forward, but it was a safer step in the right direction. To regain trust, Liam personally visited every store that had dropped him, owning up to his mistake and offering a better solution. Some turned him away, but a few gave him a second chance. Slowly, orders started coming in again. He moved carefully, reinvesting only when it made sense. The risks were still there, but now they were calculated. He was no longer gambling, he was building. This was his moment of truth. He had faced failure, but instead of letting it define him, he used it to grow. The setback had nearly broken him. But now he was stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. Liam wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was preparing for something bigger. Liam had been grinding for months, slowly rebuilding his reputation and business. Sales were steady, but he was still far from financial security. Then, one afternoon, his phone rang. It was a regional supermarket chain, one of the buyers he had pitched to weeks ago. They were impressed by how he handled his previous setback and wanted to place a bulk order. It was the biggest opportunity he had ever had. At first, excitement filled his chest, but then reality hit. He didn't have the inventory or the capital to fulfill such a massive order. He had to think fast. Instead of panicking, Liam negotiated a partial upfront payment to secure the stock he needed. He also called his new supplier, convincing them to prioritize his order. For the first time, he wasn't just reacting to problems, he was solving them before they happened. When the shipment finally arrived at the supermarket's distribution center, Liam held his breath. If anything went wrong, it could ruin his reputation permanently. But everything ran smoothly. The store was thrilled with the results and immediately placed another, even bigger order. Suddenly, Liam wasn't just another small-time supplier, he was playing in the big leagues. That one phone call changed everything. His business went from surviving to scaling. More stores started reaching out, wanting to work with him. His name was spreading, not as the man who failed, but as the one who adapted and delivered. For the first time, Liam saw a future beyond just paying the bills. He wasn't just back in the game, he was winning. With every new deal, Liam's bank account grew. For the first time in years, he wasn't worrying about rent or unpaid bills. He upgraded his home, took his family on a long overdue vacation, and finally felt like he had control over his life again. But success brought something unexpected. People who once ignored him suddenly wanted to reconnect. Old business partners, distant relatives, and even former friends now acted as if they had always believed in him. At first, it felt good. The invitations, the praise, the opportunities. Everything he had once dreamed of was now within reach. Investors offered him quick money to scale faster, but they pushed him toward risky deals. He was invited to exclusive networking events, surrounded by people who only seemed to care about wealth and status. For the first time, Liam felt the pull of a different kind of pressure, the temptation to chase easy success instead of building something lasting. Deep down, old fears crept in. What if he lost everything again? What if he made the wrong decision and ended up back where he started? The thought terrified him. But then he remembered why he started this journey in the first place. He hadn't come this far just to impress people who had once written him off. His business was built on trust, resilience, and smart decisions, not shortcuts. So Liam made a choice. Instead of chasing the fast money, he focused on long-term growth. He turned down flashy deals that didn't align with his vision and surrounded himself with people who truly supported him. It wasn't always easy, but it was the right path. Success had tested him, but he passed. And because of that, his business and his legacy would last. Liam had spent months making smart decisions, reinvesting carefully, and staying true to his vision. And then it all clicked. A major national retailer took notice of his company's efficiency and reliability. They offered him an exclusive contract, locking in millions in revenue overnight. His business, once run from a tiny apartment, was now an industry leader. The numbers kept climbing, and for the first time he realized he had made it. The growth was unstoppable. With new warehouses, expanded operations, and a team of dedicated employees, Liam's company became a dominant force in the market. Investors who once ignored him were now offering him deals he didn't even need. Reporters called his journey the ultimate comeback. And his story spread as proof that failure wasn't the end, just a turning point. He had gone from bankrupt at 50 to a billionaire at 50. But the money wasn't the real reward. The real victory was knowing he had rebuilt his life on his own terms. He had proven to himself, his family, and everyone who doubted him that resilience mattered more than luck. He no longer feared losing everything because he knew now he could rebuild from nothing. Success wasn't about never failing. It was about never stopping. Standing in his office, overlooking the city skyline, Liam thought back to the man who had once stocked grocery store shelves, drowning in debt. That man had felt hopeless, But now he was living proof that no matter how bad things get, there's always a way back. As Liam sat in his office, reflecting on his journey, he realized something powerful. Success was never just about the money. The billions in his bank account weren't what truly defined him. What mattered most was the resilience, the lessons, and the mindset that got him here. He had failed, struggled, and nearly given up, but each setback had been a stepping stone, shaping him into the man he was today. He thought about all the times he had doubted himself, when creditors stopped calling because they knew he had nothing left, when friends distanced themselves, when rejection after rejection told him he was too old to start over. But none of that had been true. The real limitation had never been his age or circumstances. It had been the belief that his best years were behind him. He had proven that wasn't the case. Now, he wanted others to understand this truth. Too many people give up because they think they've missed their chance, that success has an expiration date. But Liam was living proof that it's never too late to change your story. He wasn't special. He wasn't lucky. He was just someone who refused to let failure be his final chapter. And if he could do it, so could anyone willing to bet on themselves. So now, let me ask you, what's stopping you? Have you ever felt like it was too late to start over? Like success was out of reach? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if Liam's story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more incredible comeback stories. Your breakthrough might be closer than you think.